If the valley is reached by high passes, only the best of friends and worst of enemies are its visitors. That's a proverb in Ladakh and Tibet. I think our ancestors referred to invaders and explorers in this proverb, but it holds as much true today with tourism. And I come from one such valley that is approached by high passes, Ladakh, and I've seen the growth of tourism from best of friends coming to what seems more like worst of enemies today. And I've been also struggling, working, to see how it could again be changed to best of friends. In 1974, when Government of India opened Ladakh for tourism, I was a little boy in a remote village with only 5 families. And this family of mine was almost forced to open up our house to become what would today be called a homestay, because it was on the way between 2 very famous sites in Ladakh, Alchi and Lamayuru. So visitors from mainly Europe in those days, when Ladakh was actually accessed by high passes, and only the really interested, well-studied, adventurous as it was in those days to venture into Ladakh would come. And many of them would come begging my mother for a place to sleep, and she would, out of Ladakhi hospitality, receive them, feed them, and the next morning I would often see almost a fight going on about paying and not accepting money. And I would often see that the guests would leave when she would refuse to take money, that they have left their money under the pillows, under the plates, and so on. That was another kind of tourism that I saw. And as a little boy, I used to have a great time making lots of friends from different countries and taking them around to the mountains, to the monasteries, showing them the river and so on. And I didn't go to a school till 9 years of age, because my little village with 5 households didn't have a school, and that's not a bad thing. I learned later. It was the best time of my childhood. And these tourists were visitors or explorers who became my friends, and that's how I learned a lot of things, including English in a tiny village, and later French and German and many other languages. So as a little child, they were a great part of my growth, learning about the world and the languages. The problem in Ladakh is that we are completely dependent on glaciers for our water, for our farming. And with the warming up, these glaciers are smaller and smaller. And in springtime, when all plants wake up asking for water, there isn't enough water, partly because the glaciers are becoming smaller, partly because where the glaciers are at heights, it's still too cold for it to melt and reach the village where they need water. So there is a great shortage of water in springtime, conflicts around water. But then in summer, there's actually excess of water, even floods, as the glaciers melt and melt fast. And this flow continues into autumn and even winter with a lag. Now, winter, nobody farms, so the water just flows into the Indus River and Arabian Sea. So we said, how about freezing it in winter and keeping it in a way that it lasts till the next summer. This, of course, was considered laughable by many to do it at village altitudes because it would melt prematurely. By March, all ice on ground is gone. How can you keep ice till May and June? And we wanted to do it at village altitude so that people could easily do it. There were other experiments before us, but they had to be built high up near the glaciers, which was so high up that people wouldn't bother to maintain. So we used high school science to make ice last. To cut it short, I'd just say that in geometry, we learn about shapes that have minimal surface area for the volume. For example, spheres, hemispheres, cones. So we, at this school, said you can either cover the glacier ice with the shade so it lasts longer into the spring, but that wouldn't be practical because how much of covering can you afford for a huge chunk of ice or a mountain of ice? So can we reduce the surface area and increase the volume, because the sun needs surface area, doesn't care about volume. Farmers need volume, don't care about surface area. So can we somehow make a cone of ice that goes vertically up, and a cone, like a hemisphere, has minimal surface area for the volume, so that sun cannot melt it because it doesn't get the surface area. So we did a prototype 4 years ago and betted on how long it will last. The wildest was till April, but then it went till July. The ice lasted till July and slowly melted to give its water to trees. So the hypothesis, the magic of high school science worked to solve this problem. When Ladakh was open to tourism, it had only approach access by road, and therefore it was so hard. So only the very, very dedicated and committed ones would come. But now we have like 13 or 14 flights a day in summer. So suddenly those passes are gone and it's open for mass tourism. And that is killing Leh, the city, which is where it is concentrated. Unfortunately, this tourism rose from 2,000 when it started, roughly, to 20,000 for until around 2004 or so. It used to be almost steady at 20,000. Then in the next few years, till by 2010 or so, it went to 200,000 suddenly. And 200,000 concentrated on a 5 square kilometer township of Leh. So you can imagine 200,000 on a town of 5 square kilometers with 20,000 people, and in 5 summer months. Such a concentrated dose that it's killing the city itself. So what through this we are trying to do is to make them best of friends again from this concentrated dose of tourists, which people in Leh have had enough of them. They are not interested in any cultural exchange or about their lives or so on. It's just a hotel to sleep and get done with that. So what we are now trying to do is expand it outside Leh and outside of the 5 summer months. So if you expand it to all parts of Ladakh and open many, many, many villages with their farmhouses, with the mothers or amales trained to receive visitors in very professional ways, both get amazing experience, and then the carrying capacity suddenly increases. What is like the limit or beyond for a 5 square kilometer township, suddenly when you expand it to the 45,000 square kilometers that Ladakh is and 300,000 people, I did a back of the envelope calculation, and it turns out that we can actually absorb 500,000 more and still be very meaningful in different villages where people are interested in each other. They get to see authentic life in villages and so on. So by expanding it outside of Leh into villages like Pyang and beyond, it can once again become interesting for both sides.